This video is proudly sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform to make your work stand out. More on that later. Hello fellow hoarders of the blue, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to Heavy Contrast. Heavy Contrast is a series where I try to paint one miniature to the highest standard possible, using just contrast paints and highlights. And in today's video, I will be suffering while painting the biggest miniature I've ever painted for this series, the brand new Screamer Killer in glorious 2nd edition colors. Thanks to Games Workshop for sending me this model for free, I guess. Let's get cracking. As you can see, we are starting from a base coat of Wraithbone spray, and the first step is going to be painting his massive red body. This is going to take the most time, it's going to be the most time consuming task, and also is going to be very messy, so it's first to get that out of the way and then move on to other details. So for that, I'm going to use a 1-to-1 mix of Fleshy's red and Blood Angel's red. I'm going to apply this over all of the body, and I want to try to do this in sections, but obviously some bits will have to be overlapped. I'm taking the biggest brush I have and I'm doing this as fast as I can. If you need to have some surfaces overlapping, your instinct might be to do that on the shadows, but it's actually better to do that onto the highlights, because you're going to actually paint over those and hide that seam. With the red now fully dry, it's time to start highlighting it. And you can choose to highlight it afterwards, but highlighting it now has some benefits. For example, we can use a light dry brush to establish the first stage of highlighting, because that way we can just clean up afterwards. And for this highlight, I'm going to use Wild Rider Red. Again, I'm going to start with a light dry brush. You can just start with a glazing. It will work just as well. But starting with a dry brush will help us tremendously on the task of painting this massive beast and establishing some nice gradients. With the initial dry brush step now finished, I'm going to refine these highlights and make them more intense using some heavy glazing. This is the sort of consistency. So something in between a layer and a heavy glaze, really. I'm going to be pretty aggressive with this. This is a large model and don't want to spend here a ton of time. The thing with the red in this model is that it's not really that important. Yes, it's very prominent, it's the biggest detail in the whole miniature, but it's also a background detail. It's just the background against which all of the other details rest, so we can take some liberties here and not be as precise or as careful. And thanks to that previous dry brush, this layer goes in really easily. With that highlight now done, and trust me, it was a pain in the ass, we're going to move into the next highlights where we're going to do the same all over again, but this time without the aid of dry brushing. And for this highlight, we're going to use Fire Dragon Bride. What I will do with Fire Dragon Bride is a thin edge highlight, or as thin as I can put myself to make it in this humongous model. And for the last highlight on the red details, I'm going to use Lugenath Orange. You want this to be thinned down so it's not too aggressive, and we're going to accentuate the highlights with it with Fire Dragon Bride essentially. When I did the same scheme for the gowns, what you can see in the top right corner I actually did one more highlight on top of this, but for this such a large model, I actually don't recommend it. So this will be our last highlight. I've always wanted to have my own website to showcase my work, but you see, I am the king of procrastination. But thanks to today's video sponsor, Squarespace, I finally did it. Let me show you why I love Squarespace so much with my own website. Just select one of the amazing professional templates with designs for every use case and then just tweak it to your own style. They are 100% customizable. Change your look, update content, and add features to fit your unique needs. You can make any Squarespace template do what you want, so your idea, brand, or business stands out online on every device. You have so many options. I'm still tweaking things here and there. It's great fun. The possibilities I now have with this powerful engine are endless. I can design and make my own merch with them. I can sell my own products like my STLs, which I have more coming by the way. Whether you sell physical, digital, or service products, Squarespace has the tools you need to start selling online. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you are ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/juanhidalgo to save 10% of your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and now back to the video. And as you can see off camera, I went through literal hell, base coating all of the light color details using Corax White and cleaning everything up. And now for our next step, I'm going to paint the pinkish head, and for this I'm going to use a 1-to-1 mix of Makos Purple and Contrast Medium. The most crucial detail is the top of the head, so I'm going to start with that and be as fast as possible. I'm also going to cover the scales on the forehead, but try not to cover the teeth or the inside of the mouth. With that drying, I'm going to tackle other area so I can keep on working on the face, and the easiest one to do is all of the fleshy joints, and for this I'm going to use a mix of 1 part Volupus Pink, 1 part Makos Purple, and 1 part Contrast Medium. I prefer to tackle the joints first in case I need to clean any of the bone areas. Don't forget to also pick up these things with this mix, whatever the hell they are. With all of those things base coated, it's now time to base coat these carapace pieces on the front of his head, and for that I'm going to use Volupus Pink. Now I'm going to base coat the inside of the mouth and these kind of tubes that he has going to it. I'm guessing that is his screaming weapon, and for this I'm going to use a striking scorpion green. I almost forgot one step. Please note that I also painted with green his eyes. I'm going to go back to Volupus Pink and I'm going to try to draw some veins on the top of his head. Very subtle and small, just like that, teeny tiny detail. With that detail now painted, I'm going to paint the teeth, which have been again cleaned up with Corax White. I'm going to apply a straight up skeleton horde over them. Now it's time to paint the bone details, and for them I'm going to use a 1-to-1 mix of Skeleton Horde and Contrast Medium. But you see, in the original paint job, the scales go from dark to light at the bottom, and if I apply just Skeleton Horde over this, the contrast is going to pull in the other direction. So what I will do, just for these stepped scales, I'm going to use the Skeleton Horde, but I'm going to put the model upside down. So naturally, the paint will tend to flow to where I want it. and hopefully create that nice effect. I'm going to apply this same mix over the rest of the bones as well, but I will wait till this is dry, so they dry in a natural way. With our initial layer of skeleton horn medium dry, you can see the nice effect going in the right direction. You can increase it even more and make it more pronounced by doing some layer and feathering. You can use the same mix, or you can use straight up skeleton horde. I'm going to use straight up skeleton horde, but if you don't feel confident of controlling it, use the mix. We apply, clean the brush really quickly and feather it out. You need to be really quick, there is no time to lose here. The trick is speed. You can use 2 brushes as well, that also helps, but I don't need it and neither should you. Let's just pretend I didn't change my background and then change it again and go back to shading a little bit extra the mouth. For this I'm going to use a mix of 1 part orc flesh and 4 parts contrast medium. I'm going to apply this at the very inside of the mouth to create a little bit more shading. We can also use some pure orc flesh to shade a little bit of this so it's not that egregiously intense. We're just going to do a little bit of an edge of a recessed shade. It will help with the definition of these areas. That step is now done, and for our next step, off camera, I base coated all of the parts that will be turquoise color with Mechanicus Standard Gray. And our next step is going to do a pre-highlight on all of those areas. We are going to take a similar approach to what Slab Chop is, and for that dry brush I'm going to use Corax White. I don't want to catch a lot, we just want to catch, for example, near the end where his back armor steps onto the next layer, so we have a nice gradient there, and also any of other volumetric details that might be. Be very careful with the parts of the model that are already painted. For this it's very useful to choose which dry brush you're using. With the dry brush done, now it's time to apply a layer of Achillean green over the whole of those sections. And this dry brush is going to make for a nice initial highlight that is going to make our life so much easier. For these large sections at the back, I'm going to try to tackle them in small sections instead of doing the whole panel. And we have those useful divisions for the different pieces that the model was made of as a guide, and I'm going to use them. Also, if you need to leave a separation mark, it's better to leave it in the vertical orientation, because we're going to do some nice striations for the carapace, and that's going to be very useful to mask any of those small defects. So with that drying, or almost dry, you can see that yes, we have some splotchiness here and there, but because we're going to paint all of those nice striations afterwards, I don't really care. But what I do care is this, I feel is a little bit too bright, and I don't think more Achillean green is going to cut it. So I'm going to move into Black Templar and I'm going to do the same as I did on the bone sections. And is apply this, clean my brush very quickly and feather this out onto the rest of the carapace. I want this to be really dark. If you don't feel comfortable with the feathering method, just do glazing. It's going to be the same in the end, but this is just faster for me. It's now time to highlight all of those areas, and I'm going to start with the bone color. And for this, the first step is going to be Ushabti bone. I'm just going to take Ushabti bone and do some lines. You will see that at some point the line kind of disappears, and that's where I will stop. We also have to remember to do an edge highlight all around. For our second highlight, we are going to use a mix of 2 parts Pallidwood flesh to 1 part Ushabti bone. And we are going to do the exact same. We're just starting the lines from further down. And yeah, this is going to take you exactly as long as you are thinking. Our next step is going to be pure palette wood flesh. We're going to keep on doing the same, just starting from even lower down. Try to keep your lines consistent and aligned. And finally, we're going to take pure white and do the same, only this time just at the very bottom. Now it's time to paint the blue carapace, and for this we're going to start with Zotic green, and the process is exactly the same. The next step is a mix of 2 parts Fenrisian grey and 1 part Zotic green. And for the final step I'm going to do Fenrisian grey, and this will be picking just the very edges. For the smaller pieces of the carapace you can do just dots, but because this is quite large, I'm going to do a small line. We're not going to paint all of the fleshy connective tissue, and for this I'm going to start with a mix of 1 part China lilac and 1 part wraithbone. For this bit here in between the flesh, just going to pick up the ridges very carefully. And for the connective tissue between the different parts of the armor, I'm just going to do an edge highlight basically. And finally a small dot of palette wood flesh to finish highlighting all of those details. It's now time to paint the face, and for this I'm going to use a mix of 1 part China lilac and 2 parts wraithbone. I'm going to use this as my initial highlight. Also you can use this as your cleanup if you have any messes. If you messed up at some point and introduce some of the surrounding colors, this will be the perfect color to fix it. For the next highlight on the skin we're going to move on to palette wood flesh. I usually like to reintroduce the same highlight colors all over the miniature. That really helps with the integration and atmosphere. And for the final highlight I'm going to do pure white. With the pale flesh now finished, I'm going to paint the pink carapace on his forehead, and for this I'm going to start with a highlight of pink horror. I'm going to do first of all an edge highlight, and then I'm going to continue with the lines motif, just to be consistent. For the next highlight, I'm going to use a 1-to-1 mix of wraithbone and pink horror. For the next highlight, we're going to go back to the main highlight for the flesh. This is 1 part China lilac and 2 parts wraithbone. And now for the last part of the model, we are going to paint the green details, and for this, the first highlight is going to be a 1-to-1 mix of mood green and dawn yellow. And for the final highlight, I'm going to do Dawn Yellow. Don't forget to pick the eyes with this. Let me tell you, this was exhausting. That being said, he does look quite glorious, doesn't he? Retro color schemes in modern miniatures is totally my cup of tea, or whatever is in this thing. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget that if you like my videos and want to help me make them, you can follow me on social media. You have the links to all my social media in the description below and in the pinned comment of this video. Share and like this video, but most importantly, there is Patreon and channel members. Patrons and members allow me to do all the cool videos that I want to make, and most importantly, they allow me to release them all for free here on YouTube. Perks include access to an amazing Discord community full of lovely people, early access to some of the videos, and now also private one-on-one tutorings. You have 2 tiers options for those, 45 minutes and 3 hours a month. They are filling fast, so if you want to have a private tutoring with me, don't hesitate and join now. Help me and my family enjoy the list of the coolest persons in the planet, including Des, Rainer Horbach, Jose Navarro, Janner, Mark Vellenkoop, Flo, Terry Denham, Robert Smith, Terrinosaur, Will Ewig, Heather Amster, Paul Woodwin, Stefan Franiate, Giovanni Costanza, Biom, Howard Hotville, Thomas Ulstergaard, Javi Mota, Christoph Moret, Bartholomew Cahusa, Victor Domen, Nicolas Fournel, PJ Mackay, Mick Gallagher, Felix Franke, Aaron Bernstein, Brendan Smith, Alfredo Phillips, Tim Uchida, Stephanie Old, Nick DeMao, David Sutherland, Roger Nielsen, Oscar Jonathan Tomberg, Dan Mako, Cristalios, Carlos Rivera, Jimmy Milligan, Kevin Mian, Darcy Farrar, Chris Fivey, Samuel, Natius Maximus, Arundel, Eamon Patton, Garen Smith, Mark Atkinson, Mark Jarvis, Joe Simpson, Charles Almintas, GeForce, Dr. V, Leonard Lindemann, Kieran O'Murthair, and Kevin Sulers. And as for me, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.